Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Greatland Gold Annual General Meeting. Throughout this presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Simply type in your question in the box below and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself, given the number of attendees on the call today. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. These will be available via your Investor Meet Company dashboard. I would also like to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. Before we begin, we would like to submit the following poll and be grateful if you could give that your very kind attention. I'd now like to hand over to Alex Borelli, Non-Executive Chairman of Greatland Gold PLC. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Mark, and good morning to shareholders and attendees of this annual general meeting of Greatland Gold. I declare the meeting open. Welcome to all who are listening, and thank you for your patience today with this online presentation from us and the formal meeting. To introduce ourselves, first of all, so you know who is attending from the company. Obviously, myself as a non-executive chairman of the company. I'm here in London with Clive Latcham, one of the directors, together with Gemma Craven and also Stephen Ronaldson, our lawyer from Druce's. In Australia, we have Gervais Heddle, CEO, and Callum Baxter, CTO. Welcome to you all. So I will continue with the process of the meeting. You have the presentation, and there is a disclaimer noted, which I will draw your attention to. I won't go through the wording of that. So unless there's any other issue and everyone has clarity on sound and process, I will continue. We have put, the notice was sent to shareholders in the ordinary course, and we had notice of meeting with 5 resolutions proposed in the first instance. We have 4 ordinary resolutions. I will come to ordinary resolution 1 in the first instance. That is to receive the report of the directors and the audited financial statements of the company for the year ended 30th of June 2020. We are taking the proxy numbers in relation to this voting because members are not in attendance at this meeting today. The proxies we've received exclude a further proxy we've received, which is voting in favour from a late letter of representation, and that's in relation to 7,841,000 additional votes. So the numbers you have on your screen don't take fully into account votes in favour, but you can see that the votes in favour of resolution 1 are 532,898,234. Those against 59,203,985, and the votes withheld 669,951. The result of that, before taking into account the 7.8 million, show that 90% of votes are in favour, and therefore I declare the resolution carried. I would now like to move to resolution 2. Our colleague Clive Latcham joined the company as a non-executive director during the year, and as a result his re-election is up for voting at this annual general meeting. The resolution is to re-elect as a director Clive Latcham. Once again, the votes exclude in favour of 7.841 million votes, but those voting in favour of Clive Latcham's appointment total 423,219,906. Those against 168,859,287. Votes withheld 692,977. So the percentage of votes in favour are 71.5% before taking into account the additional shares, and therefore I declare the resolution carried. And I would like to welcome Clive Latcham formally back to the company as a director. Welcome, Clive.
Thank you.
Resolution 3 is a further ordinary resolution. It is again a standard resolution, which reads to reappoint PKF Littlejohn LLP as auditors of the company and to authorise the directors to determine their remuneration. So resolution 3, the votes received by the registrar, again, exclude the 7.841 million in favour. Total votes in favour 546,037,486. Votes against 45,656,110. Votes withheld 1,078,574. The votes in favour are over 92.3%, and therefore I declare the resolution carried. Thank you to all shareholders. Resolution 4 is again a standard resolution for the ability for the directors to issue new shares effectively on a pro rata basis to shareholders, and that is for the nominal value amount of £750,000. So resolution 4, votes in favour, again excluding the 7.841 million, votes in favour 587,892,383, votes against 1,895,724, votes withheld 2,984,083. The percentage of votes in favour for an ordinary resolution, 99.7% before taking into account the additional late voting. So I declare the resolution carried. Thank you, shareholders. Moving on to the slide headed up Special Resolution 5. We acknowledge that Resolution 5 that sometimes gives rise to questions as to the ability of the company to issue shares on a non-preemptive basis. Resolution 5 was in relation to the disapplication of preemption rights, and we had a majority of votes in favour, being over 50%, but we haven't had the requisite voting in favour of the resolution as a special resolution. Therefore, we have withdrawn that resolution from voting formally at this meeting, and we will be speaking to the major shareholders in order to understand their position, and we will re-present this resolution during the first quarter, I would hope, of 2021, re-present it to shareholders to give us the ability to issue shares on a non-preemptive basis. So that is Resolution 5. The next slide will give you a summary of the votes, which will be updated and disclosed by RNS at some stage after this meeting. So that closes the formal business of the meeting. The next parts of the meeting relate to a presentation from Gervase Heddle as CEO, followed by Callum Baxter as CTO, and we will then have a series of questions that have been submitted in advance of this meeting, and I understand there are ability for shareholders to put their questions on this computer as well. So thank you very much for your attendance, and I'd like to pass over to Gervase Heddle.
Alex, thank you very much, and shareholders, look, thank you all very much for joining us today. It is a real disappointment to myself and Callum that we can't be there with you in London today. I think the AGM, the face-to-face AGM that we do every year, is a very important part of the company's annual life cycle, and it's a great opportunity for us to get to know you and the issues that you have, and also for you to get to know us. And so it's a shame that we can't be there today, but obviously it has been a very strange year. Hopefully both of us will be able to be there in London in the not too distant future, and at least catch up with some of you, possibly even for a drink down the pub. It has certainly been it's been a long time since we've both been able to be there. Look, I'd like to thank you all, I guess, firstly for all your support over the past few years. I know some of you have been, very long-term shareholders of Greatland, and we appreciate all your support. And obviously, we're also fascinated by some of the online research that goes on as well. It's quite amazing, some of the things that people dig up. So again, thank you for all that. Sometimes we even learn something, which is great. Just in regards to Special Resolution 5, I just wanted to add that, look, the issue with that resolution was obviously we've had an influx of ETFs recently coming into the shareholding of the company. As we understand it, the ETFs take advice on voting from specialised voting services. And basically, with all that quick movement that's happened in our share register, we haven't had the opportunity to speak to them. But the first thing we will be doing early next year is building a rapport with those voting services and understanding the particular needs and requirements of the ETFs. So Our apologies for that, but that's hopefully something that we will deal with relatively quickly. Turning to more interesting things, the company and where we're at. Obviously, it's been a great 12 months for the company. It really has been, an extraordinary time. And, we've experienced some remarkable exploration success at Havieron with 11 consecutive sets of excellent results so far. I understand that Newcrest is confirming with people that there will be another Havieron update on Thursday, which there will be. Obviously, we've had some great results there, and I think what's particularly exciting about those results is that they've established a large mineralised footprint already, certainly something that was larger than our original expectations. But importantly, even after 18 months of drilling, mineralisation is still open, particularly to the northeast, the northwest, and at depth. So there's still a lot of more work to do there, and we're looking forward to a major growth drilling program at Havieron next year. Callum's going to talk more about Havieron specifically in his comments later in the meeting. In addition, as you all know, we recently signed 2 joint venture agreements with Newcrest and a $50 million loan agreement that funds our share of costs at Havieron, including all the costs for the early works through to feasibility study. That's a very important development, which I'll talk about more in a moment. From my mind, there's just no doubt that the company is now in the strongest position that it has ever been in. We've got this great asset there in Havieron, an excellent footprint in the Patterson. We're funded for our share of costs through to feasibility. And in essence, I think we're in an excellent position. We've been building an excellent team in the background. And I think it's going to be really looking forward to how things play out over the next 12 months. So today I'm going to provide a little bit of an overview, and then Callum is going to talk specifically about Havieron. And then finally, I'll attempt to answer some of your questions. I can't guarantee I'm going to get to all of them. We've already had, I think, nearly 100 being submitted, pre-submitted. But I'll certainly give it a shot. So turning to this slide 11, which you see in front of us, for those that aren't as familiar with the company, for those of you joining with us first time, this provides a bit of an overview of our position in the Patterson. We have 6 projects. The Patterson is one of our 6 projects. But obviously the Patterson project is our most significant project. As you dial down into the Patterson project, we've really got 3 major things now going on, and you can see them on that map, and I apologise, it's a little bit hard to see on that map at that scale. But in essence, we now have, most importantly, the Havieron joint venture, which is a joint venture between Newcrest and Greatland, where Greatland now owns 40% of that joint venture. And obviously that's where we've made a significant gold and copper discovery that's moving at pace in terms of exploration and certainly potential future development. We also recently announced the Jury joint venture with Newcrest, which is an exploration joint venture. And so just moving back a step, so that Havieron joint venture, if you look at the map, covers that red square area down on the right bottom side of that map. The Jury joint venture, which covers the Patterson Range East and Black Hills licenses, those 2 licenses are outlined there in the green. I think it's worth noting that that Patterson Range East license, that cost us a very small amount up front. That was a vacant land when we applied for it. So the cost up front was maybe $10,000. Black Hills, we paid $250,000 for that up front. So both of those were very low cost upfront purchases. So in addition to the Havieron and Jury joint ventures, we've also have 2 100% owned licenses, well, 1 granted license, 1 application. The granted license is what we're now calling the Scallywag license, which is the larger blue license there between Havieron and Black Hills. And that was formerly known as the Havieron exploration license, but obviously it's going to be very complicated to have the Havieron joint venture with Newcrest and the Havieron exploration license. So we've changed its name. It's now the Scallywag exploration license. We also have there on the bottom right-hand corner, we have the Rudel exploration license, and that's also an exciting opportunity for us. And again, picked up very cheaply. It was ground that somebody relinquished and we grabbed it. So in November of this year. So just recently, we announced 2 joint venture agreements with Newcrest. So the Havieron joint venture, which really formalises the relationship between us, which was established originally in the farm-in agreement signed in March of 2019. And we've also signed the Jury joint venture agreement. But significantly, we also signed a US $50 million loan agreement. And that really is the key to these agreements, because that loan agreement now carries us across for what most companies is the riskiest part of the funding curve. When you're still at this early stage in the project where you don't have a pre-feasibility study or a feasibility study, and we now have the money at hand to fund us through to feasibility, including the costs of our share of the early works, plus also our share of all the growth drilling, which obviously is designed to keep expanding that footprint of mineralisation at Havieron. So that funding now is key, or fund us through pre-feas and then also through to fees. By the time we finish the feasibility study, we should have not only the feasibility study in our hand, but also a decline that is substantially completed. And at that point, obviously, the project is substantially de-risked, and we should be able to relatively easily raise cheap funding from many of the large banks to fund any remaining capital expenditure that is required, and also potentially refinance out that loan from Newcrest, which is already at a competitive interest rate at LIBOR plus 8%, but hopefully at an even lower rate. But at high level, we're very pleased with the structure of the joint venture agreement for Havieron, and very pleased to have secured the funding that we require to take us through to feasibility. As I mentioned, as part of that overall deal, we also signed the Jury joint venture, which covers the Patterson Range East and Black Hills licenses. Newcrest has the right to earn up to 75% in those licenses by spending 20 million Australian dollars over 5 years. We believe that is a very attractive deal, particularly on a square kilometre basis relative to any of the other farm-in deals that have been done in the last few years in the Patterson. We're really looking forward to the 2021 exploration program there. Newcrest are very keen. We have 2 rigs already penciled in, 1 rig commencing, the DDH1 rig commencing in March, another one commencing in April. First up, we'll be testing the Parlay target at Black Hills, and then moving the rigs up to Patterson Range East to test some of the other targets which have, demonstrated geophysical characteristics similar to that we've seen at Havieron. So obviously our goal there is to discover another Havieron, and we're going to be moving at pace next year in order to do that. So finally, in the Patterson, as I mentioned, we retain 100% of both Scallywag and Roodle. Again, Scallywag, we know there's there's targets with similar geophysical characteristics to Havieron. We've just completed our first pass drill campaign of a number of those targets. As you know, we are waiting for those results. When we get the core from that campaign, we first send it to Mineralise, as we did with all the core from Havieron, to have that core scanned for valuable information before the core is cut and assayed by the lab. The labs are tremendously busy, so we apologise for the delay in receiving those results, but really the labs are at breaking point at the moment with the exploration boom that's going on in Western Australia. Hopefully we will have some results to report from you before Christmas or shortly thereafter. So I'd like to pass over to Callum Baxter, who you all know well, the Chief Technical Officer for Greatland, to provide you with a few of his thoughts on the most recent results that we've reported at Havieron nearly 6 weeks ago, and just give you some sense of where that project is going. Thank you, Callum.
Thanks, Gervase. And it's great to be speaking to all our very loyal shareholders and also new shareholders. Welcome to Greatland. And we have other parties on the line as well listening in to this AGM presentation. It's been a fantastic journey so far, particularly with our Patterson efforts. And since identifying the Havieron target back in 2016, things have come a long way, and particularly with Newcrest's involvement since March last year, things have moved very rapidly to the point where we're at the moment. And really, this project has moved at an exceptional pace, probably in my career, almost 30 years, I've never seen a project move so fast from what effectively was exploration drill holes through to we're very near our initial resource estimate, and there's forward planning for box cut and decline to get the ore out of the ground as soon as possible, subject to everything going well from here. And since May 2019, which is when Newcrest commenced drilling at Havieron, through to today, we've effectively announced 11 consecutive sets of excellent drilling results from the drill campaign. And as you can see on this slide on the right-hand side, some of the notable intercepts, such as HAD 65, Wedge 2, 120.7 metres at 9.3 grams per tonne gold, 0.18% copper, including 26.6 metres at 34 grams per tonne gold and 0.23% copper. And other highlights from Newcrest drilling this year, such as HAD 49, 82 metres at 6.1 grams per tonne gold, 0.41% copper, which includes 34.8 metres at 9.2 grams per tonne gold and 0.64 copper. And results of this type are effectively outstanding. And we've managed to announce a series of results of this calibre, which is just an outstanding achievement. And the slide on the left really shows a top-level view of the Havieron system, or part of the Havieron system, as we've seen it to date. It's an ovoid shape, and the long axis is about 650 metres long, and across the short axis, it's about 350 metres. And then the mineralised system is cut by a later dolerite dike, which is shown in green there, effectively heading north-south. And within the oval structure, we've got the purple crescent zone, which is effectively a high accumulation of sulfides, and that carries some very good grades. And then adjacent to that in the light blue, we can see the mineralised breccia, which still carries some very good grades of gold and copper. And overall drilling's continuing on various fronts at the moment, but particularly focusing on the southeast zone there, getting an adequate drill density to potentially lift our initial inferred investigation into an indicated category as we move forward. Moving on to the next slide, we're looking at, again, a top-level view of the system, and it breaks apart our main target areas. So what we've talked about a lot over the past 18 months is the crescent sulfide zone, which you can see there on the bottom right-hand side of the drawing. And that's quite large. It's got a significant strike length of several hundred metres, 500 metres or so, with widths up to 100 metres. And we've also got in the northwest there, on the top left-hand side of the drawing, the crescent northeast closure, where we're seeing somewhat of a replication of what we see in the southeast. And then in between those, at a lower RL, so maybe about 300 metres below that, is what we're seeing the northern breccia, and that's still an evolving story, along with the northeast closure. And then relatively new, we're seeing mineralisation outboard of the crescent zone in what we call the eastern breccia, and only several drill holes have been through that zone to date, but it's still looking very good. And really that enhances the overall prospectivity of the system, where we're seeing mineralisation external to the oval structure that we thought it was restricted to initially, but it's obviously pushing out with a greater footprint now. And exploration will be moving on several fronts going through into 2021. At the moment, the past several months has been focused on infill drilling to get enough drill density to be able to calculate a mineral resource estimate. But that infill drilling has now moved on into further infill drilling to lift the resource estimate potentially into the indicated category. And then into 2021, it'll be pushing into growth drilling and a significant commitment with the existing number of rig infrastructure on site. And it'll effectively be focused towards collecting more ounces to be able to potentially provide another upgrade to the resource through the course of 2021. And then finally, where are we moving next? We've met key milestones well ahead of schedule to date. Stage 1 is complete, December 2019. Stage 2 is complete, April 2020. And Stage 3 has recently been announced as complete in November 2020. So a total of $45 million US expenditure to date. And pushing into the future, we have an initial mineral resource for Havieron on track, expected to be delivered during this month. We have early works commencement with a new camp at Havieron to accommodate up to 230 people, which is nearly complete. We have construction of a box cut and decline expected to commence late 2020 or early 21. And then we'll be moving into pre-feasibility for Havieron, which will include an indicated mineral resource estimate, which comes before the pre-feasibility. So that will be delivered during 2021 as well. And of course, we've recently announced the Jury joint venture with additional exploration activities funded by Newcrest, where we're going to be drilling high priority targets, which Gervais talked about earlier. These targets will include Parley and Goliath, and that will commence in early 2021. So we're moving forward with multiple exploration campaigns and effectively 3 exploration campaigns in 2021, Havieron joint venture, Jury joint venture, and our own 100% owned exploration licenses. Thank you for your time today, and I'll hand back to Gervais.
Actually, Gervais, just to give you a few moments just to review the questions. Firstly, thank you to Alex, Gervais and Callum for a very detailed presentation and formalities of the AGM. Ladies and gentlemen, please could I ask you to continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of the screen. But just while the company take a few moments to review investor questions submitted today and those already pre-submitted, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your Investor Meet Company dashboard. I'd also like to remind you that your feedback is important to the company, and immediately after the presentation has ended, you'll be redirected for the opportunity to provide feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations, and would warmly encourage you to do so. Gervais, I know I haven't given you a long time to look at the questions that have come in during the live event, but I know we had a number of pre-submitted questions. Perhaps I could ask you to read out the questions and give a response where it's appropriate to do so, and then hand back to me at the end.
Yes, certainly. Thanks, Mark. I'm already getting some fun questions here, so this is going to be fun. Look, this is totally at random. I'm pulling some questions off the live Q&A. And then I've also got some pre-submitted questions as well, which I'm going to answer as well to sort of give everybody a fair go. So the first question at random, I'm picking here from the Q&A, Tom B. Thank you for your question. Tom asks, good morning. Peter O'Connor of Shaw & Partners was interviewed by Proactive Investors in July of this year. Peter mentioned that Newcrest expected production on a low scale in 12 to 18 months. This would work out around July to December 2021. This is a very exciting position to be in. Can Greatland expand on this? So, Tom, look, I think first of all, there will not be any production next year. We have said that, we've got a number of times that we hope for potential production. We would work towards that from 2 to 3 years from decline commencement. Now, obviously, we have a mining proposal in with De Beers, and hopefully we will get the final approvals on that shortly. Once we get those approvals, then we can commence the box cut and the decline. But it is obviously still subject to those approvals. From that point, we would hope to be in production within 2 to 3 years from that point. In terms of low-scale production, look, as I said, there does appear to be significant bulk mining potential here at Havieron. So I think we're probably going to get a better idea of how Havieron is going to look from an actual mining perspective when we release the initial resource estimate later this month. And then we'll also obviously get more details as we work through next year and we continue to get a better idea of the scale of the system, and also as we get some early read on those studies. But thank you for your question. Peter H asks, you've recently advertised a vacancy for the role of resource geologist. Greatland have an excellent geologist in Callum. Why do Greatland require a second? We have quite a few geologists. We need lots of geologists and consultant geologists in order to do the work that we require on our exploration projects, both in the office and in the field. And then also with Javier in particular, there's also a different style of geologist as well. A resource geologist in particular looks at issues regarding the resource calculations and resource statements. We have a couple of excellent people working on that with us at the moment, including one chap who's a leader in the industry on this type of thing. But that's we obviously have had to expand the team, including the team of consultants that we use over time to support the growing requirements of the business. Jane T asks, this is my favourite so far, a lot of us like trains, full stop. Have you had any thoughts as to using road or rail train to transport material to Telfer, question mark? It's actually quite a good question. I think sort of initially, look, I don't really think there's probably much chance of us putting in a train. But look, it will depend ultimately that the method we use to transport the ore from Havieron to Telfer will depend obviously on the volume of that material and the economics of that. So I think, again, we will wait to see where things come out with the resource, and we should have more to say on that hopefully next year. But thank you for your question. Adrian S has asked, are you still on track to confirm maiden resources in December 2020? The short answer is yes. We are on track to confirm the initial inferred mineral resource estimate this month. We've got a couple of questions. When will we know about Scallywag, please, from Matt F and Ian J. When will Scallywag results be announced? As I mentioned earlier in my comments, the labs are very busy, so we will release those results as soon as we have those results. And hopefully we will have results to release before Christmas or shortly thereafter. But thank you for your questions. What else? I might go to some of the pre-submitted questions now. So in terms of pre-submitted questions, this was a question that's come up quite a lot in various different forms. Do you see GGP as a developer of deposits or just an explorer? I think the key with this question about are we an explorer or a developer or a miner, the key here is that our goal is to maximise value for our shareholders. You know, the value of each project and then the value of the projects collectively taken as a whole. What we're not going to do is lock us into some sort of path that would potentially impede our ability to maximise the value of those assets. So I'm not going to lock us into saying, oh, we're just an explorer or just a miner or any other aspect. We are going to do what we need to do and to build the business around that in order to maximise the value of these assets. Clearly, we're moving beyond just being just an explorer now. I think there was a moment for all of us on the board the other day where, you know, we're really coming to one of those transition points now where we've obviously, Greatland has been an explorer for many years. And while we're technically obviously not a miner today because we don't have a mine in production, you know, with the Newcrest agreements in place, particularly the funding, with the initial inferred mineral resource estimate coming out soon, we are clearly starting to transition from one phase as a company to another. You know, we have an existing very strong core set, skill set in exploration with a great team doing that, but we're also building a team that can support our ability to effectively operate as a holder of a significant minority interest in Havieron. And as you all know, Havieron has the potential to become, you know, we believe a very significant mining operation. So in short, the short answer to that question is, you know, there's no one answer here. Our goal, you know, my my passion here is to just make sure that we do whatever we have to do to maximise the value of all these assets for our shareholders. Another question here is, when will the drilling season restart in 2021, and why can't GGP drill through the summer like Newcrest can? So the drilling season in the Patterson typically restarts in March, subject to weather conditions. As you know, January and February and even March are very hot, it can be very humid, can be subject to severe tropical storms and floods or fires, or famine, etc. It's quite something out there. I think the average daily temperature out there recently has been about 41, 42 degrees Celsius. So it's always hot out there. The main reason we don't drill through the summer relates to the type of drilling that's being done. So if you think about what Newcrest are doing at Havieron, that is very much later stage exploration, where you are committing significant resources to one fixed spot, and you can build the supporting infrastructure. We know, as previously stated, they've nearly completed that 230-person camp now at Havieron, and that camp has air-conditioned sleeping units, air-conditioned mess, dining facilities, recreation facilities, medical facilities. It's a very substantial operation, and that means that Newcrest can drill through the summer period, even when it's very hot, because they have the resources there to keep their people safe. The issue with doing early stage exploration is obviously we're not committing one or more drill rigs to stay on any certain spot for any particular length of time. So we need a mobile camp. We do obviously provide our people with air-conditioned caravans and other things there, but it's from a health and safety perspective, it's simply not appropriate to be drilling through the summer when you've got sort of limited facilities on what is effectively an early stage exploration camp. The next question is, why did you not move on to Patterson Range East and Black Hills with your drilling? Was this because of the jury negotiations? Yes, it was. We held off moving the rig up to Patterson Range East and Black Hills because obviously we were negotiating on them at the time with Newcrest, and we don't want to be putting any money into the ground there at the time we're in the middle of those negotiations. We are very keen, well, both parties are very keen to press ahead there now. The joint venture is in place, the jury joint venture next year. As I mentioned, we've got one DDH1 rig penciled in for March and another penciled in for April next year, and very excited to get started on that. The next question is, could you or Callum comment on the current plan for mine development? For instance, style of mine, areas to be targeted first, mine life, annual production, etc. So, look, I think this is going to be a question that's a lot easier to answer after the publication of the initial mineral resource estimate. Certainly, we'll have more information on the potential type of mine and potentially the style of mining. But look, I think the overriding issue with Havieron is that in many ways it still feels as though it's relatively early days. As Callum said, it's been a heroic effort to get to the point that we've gotten to as quickly as we have. But as you all know, mineralisation remains open. There's still a lot more drilling to do to understand the system. And I think that ultimately, in terms of questions around potential mine development, annual production, etc., we're going to have a much better idea of that probably 6 to 12 months from now. Although I expect that the analysts will start to form some early ideas regarding annual production, etc., shortly after the release of the initial resource. Another question is, what specific skills does the company possess that enables you to acquire the tenements that you did in the Patterson? Do you feel that you have a competitive advantage over your neighbours? In what way? If so, in what way? Look, I think our activity in the Patterson highlights where we are different to many other exploration companies. We didn't come into the Patterson after the discoveries were made. We came in before the recent discoveries were made anyway, at a time when entry into the Patterson was cheap. So we backed our exploration view. We did the work. We were out there looking for new projects, particularly with a gold and base metals focus. We spent a lot of time looking for new projects. We did the work on those projects. We then backed ourselves on our own view regarding exploration using the skill set that we have internally. We didn't, and then we executed deals on those projects, which were very attractive deals, we thought, and certainly proved to be in retrospect. What we didn't do is we didn't rush into the hot area, so we could tell investors we're in the hot area, and then and overpay for those assets up front. So I think that's our difference: is we are prepared. We have the skill set to evaluate these opportunities, and we're prepared to back ourselves and go early before others go. I think I saw another question about, yes, actually I've got it here. Are you looking for more potential tenements in Australia? The answer is yes, we're always looking for more opportunities. Obviously, with the opportunities now, it's, we're looking for opportunities which we really think can move the needle. And again, that's sort of certain styles of potential mineralisation that we're looking at, where we can find deposits that truly could move the needle for us as the larger company that we are now at. But we are always looking. And again, we're likely to do things in unexpected places if we're going to do them, because we are always looking, to maximise return on capital for shareholders. And if you're simply following the crowd into areas, it's much harder to achieve that. There's another question: when will drill results be released for Scallywag? I think we've already touched on that. Here's another question: is there any update that the company can give regarding the divestment of projects? So look, the divestment of other projects hasn't been obviously one of our clear recent priorities, but we have been working in the background on doing a full technical review of all the non-Paterson projects, all 5 of them. We actually have another expert in the industry has come in on a consultancy basis to help with that, which has been very useful. And look, I expect the board, we're going to sit down early in the new year and really have a hard look at some of these projects again and what we do. I think the challenge we have is that we like the prospectivity of these projects. We have the Panorama project where we have gold in rock chips and even gold nuggets at surface over 6 kilometres of strike. It's a really interesting project. And that's a project there we have in the Pilbara. Obviously, we have the 2 Tasmanian projects where we have, high-grade gold mineralisation at or near surface in both of those projects in limited historical drilling done to date. And even projects like Bromus, and that's a project we haven't mentioned for a long time, but even something like that, we're always doing work in the background and re-looking at things, and even something there, is potentially interesting as well. All very early stage thoughts, but we like, we genuinely like all these projects. Ernest Giles as well. I mean, we've got that, a substantial footprint over one of the last virtually unexplored greenstone belts in the country. I mean, these are really interesting projects, but obviously we need to sit down once we've completed this full technical review and really think about all these projects and their future in the context of the larger company that we are today. Another question here: are there any plans to list on other stock exchanges? Do you have a view on dual listing? So I think I've discussed this before at previous AGMs. There was some talk at the time about potentially a dual listing on the ASX. Look, we're always reviewing alternatives like that and thinking about possibilities. But I think for us to do a dual listing, there really needs to be some compelling reasons for us to do that. There are additional upfront costs of doing that, and there are also additional ongoing costs of doing that, additional compliance burdens, and you effectively almost need another half-time person on staff in order to ensure compliance with the dual listing regime. So there's quite a bit of extra work there, and we'll see how that plays out over the next couple of years. With that, look, I think we've answered a lot of questions today, so I might leave it with that and pass it back to you, Mark. But look, once again, I would thank everybody for their time today, and I apologise for the nature of this type of virtual thing. I think it's obviously the group hostings have done a good job, but it would be obviously much better if we could all be face to face, but hopefully we will be in the near future. Thank you very much.
That's brilliant, Gervais. Thank you very much. And of course, to all investors that submitted questions today, thank you once again for doing so. Gervais, obviously, I know that we are now coming to the conclusion, and I know that investor feedback is particularly important to the company. But I guess ahead of me just redirecting investors to provide you that feedback, perhaps I could just hand back to your good self just to wrap up. And then, as I said, I'll give instructions for investors to provide you with direct feedback.
Yes, great. Well, look, thanks once again. I'm just scrolling through questions again. There's one question here I just got to touch on. Will there be a chance of site visits for Javier? This is from Chris K. For any shareholders interested in the near future. Look, we'll have to see what we do. I don't imagine Newcrest is too keen to have, I'm not sure how many people on this call, but 700 people suddenly turn up at site in the middle of the Australian summer. But obviously we will we'll see what we can do about that. Hopefully we can do something similar to this, like a virtual tour, maybe at some point next year. So we'll look at that. But anyway, I'll leave it there with the questions. Once again, thank you everybody for your time, and thank you for your support.
Thank you very much indeed, Gervais, and thank you to the board for really updating investors at a time when COVID-19 has stopped many companies from engaging and using the AGM to enable them to make much more informed decisions. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide feedback. If you access this meeting from our platform, the feedback page will appear. If you access this via the link we sent you by email, you'll be asked to log back in. It'll take a couple of moments, and then you'll be able to provide your views and expectations and let the company know how you feel about the company directly. So on behalf of the board of Greatland Gold, I'd like to thank you all very much for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session. Good morning to you all.